James Bond has been one of the world's biggest franchises for over 50 years, and with 20 plus films, there have been a lot of great lines over the decades. It's time to look back at the top 20 quotes. Fleming's books were already a worldwide hit before Dr. No premiered in 1962, so the soon-to-be iconic character needed a great intro line.
Bond. James Bond.
James Bond has been known for his double entendres, and Brosnan's Bond was no different. This one comes courtesy of his brief time with a Danish linguistics professor. Double entendres are one thing, a good villain death pun is another. Daniel Craig was no different, and he got one last one in after using an EMP watch to detonate a villain's electronic eye.
I just showed someone your watch. Really blew their mind.
Quick, what is James Bond's preferred method of drink mixing?
A martini, shaken, not stirred.
This is a lesser known quote and more of a famous aphorism. However, it's very revealing about Bond's character.
There's a saying in England, where there's smoke, there's fire.
When Bond is fatally poisoned during a card game, he rushes out to his car for some emergency help. After his heart literally stops, he returns to the table with a biting quip to his would-be poisoner.
I'm sorry. That last hand nearly killed me.
Bond celebrated his 50th anniversary in 2012, and he did so by returning to his roots with Skyfall. This quote encapsulates the entire theme of the film, and comes in a pretty intimate moment.
Well, I like to do some things the old-fashioned way.
Another one-liner after a bad guy has been thoroughly dispatched, this time with a convenient spear gun.
I think you got the point.
Casino Royale introduced us to a more rough-around-the-edges Bond, and one with a hint of arrogance.
Why is it people who can't take advice always insist on giving it?
With all the quips and witticisms, Bond was bound to have a few groaners. However, one is so especially groan-worthy that it comes back around to great.
I thought Christmas only comes once a year.
Bond is no stranger to torture, so when Blofeld used a small drill to attempt to lobotomize the secret agent, he forgot to check the spy's watch. Rookie mistake, as Madeline sets the explosive and tosses it to Ernst.
I said, doesn't time fly?
How do you follow up electrocuting a man in a bathtub?
Shocking. Positively shocking.
Bond may be the coolest guy in the history of film, but that doesn't mean he always had his finger on the pulse of pop culture.
That's as bad as listening to the Beatles without earmuffs.
James Bond is a spy, but he can't exactly tell most people what he does for a living. Of course, if you ask him directly, he will usually just give you a cheeky response like he did in Thunderball.
Oh, I travel, a sort of licensed troubleshooter.
Bond also has all sorts of villains with odd or memorable names. The ominously named henchman Mr. Kill was no exception, leading to this Brosnan quip.
Well, there's a name to die for.
George Lazenby may have only had one turn at the wheel of the tricked-out Aston Martin, but he had one of the more memorable lines when a pretty girl cops a feel on the kilt-wearing super spy.
Just a slight stiffness coming on in the shoulder.
When he's caught in bed after a successful mission, Bond can only justify his actions by explaining that he was
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
When villain Raul Silva captures Bond, he tries to throw the spy off his game with a little man-on-man flirting. Bond instantly turns the tables on Silva with one rather shocking admission.
What makes you think this is my first time?
Of course, it's still pretty obvious that Bond prefers the ladies, at least judging by his response when he wakes up to find a 6-foot blonde named Pussy Galore standing over him.
I must be dreaming.
Daniel Craig is the only Bond to be given a definitive end when he is annihilated by a missile strike at the end of No Time to Die. In his last moments, he speaks to Madeline, who confesses her love and that Bond does in fact have a child. He responds with typical quiet dignity.
I know.